Hi, my name is Harry Tidwell, and you're watching the Shot Clock Sports Report podcast. Today, I'm joined by my co-host Braden Stone. Braden, how you doing?
I'm pretty good. How are you?
Good, good. Thank you for coming on. So, today's
Of course.
episode, we got NFL, maybe a little bit of college, a little bit of MLB. We'll see where it goes. But let's start with week 2 of the NFL. Just closed. Falcons Eagles playing right now as we're filming. But really a statement week, I think you could say, across the board. A lot of big upsets, a lot of big wins for some
Sure.
teams that people definitely weren't expecting. What's one game that really caught your eye this weekend?
I was shocked to see the Raiders come into Baltimore and beat the Ravens. That I wouldn't have predicted that. I'm sure many people didn't. Ravens just both sides of the ball kind of looked flat. Also, my favorite team, the Buccaneers. I might be a little biased, but going to Detroit, a rematch from the divisional round last year, and winning that game while we were quite short-handed with a lot of injuries, quite surprising to me as well.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that Bucks take you had. I think that win against Detroit definitely proves that last year was not a fluke. Baker Mayfield's a top quarterback in this league, and on both sides of the ball, they're an above average squad, and I think they are definitely going to be NFC contenders by the end of the year. Um, looking at the games, I'll throw in Vikings 49ers.
Oh, for sure.
Um, I hated the Vikings in this matchup. I thought the 49ers were going to steamroll them, even with CMC out. But the Vikings, tremendous on both sides of the ball. You had that electric play, 97-yard touchdown, Darnold to Jefferson, which obviously helps. But Sam Darnold looks like a completely new quarterback. I think Kevin O'Connell is one of the best, if not the best, offensive-minded coach in the NFL right now. And that defense under Brian Flores is just firing on all cylinders. I mean, holding the 49ers to 17 points with, I think, 3 turnovers is absolutely insane. Um, Another one I'll throw out there, definitely Saints Cowboys.
For sure.
Another game where I really like the Cowboys at home in this matchup, but the Saints offense is absolutely dominant. I mean, Rashid
The Saints
Shaheed,
are
Chris
the Saints
Olave.
are looking mighty good, mighty good. I know blowout win against the Panthers. The Carolina Panthers might be one of the worst teams I've ever seen. So, but coming out, going into Jerry World and blowing out the Cowboys, not just a win, they won by it was almost 30 points. I think like huge. They looked great. Chris Olave, as you said, great game. Derek Carr, I mean, he's coming into his own right now. It seems like he's found a home in New Orleans, and Saints could be scary.
Yeah, I mean, and this is only a game where Carr had to pass the ball only 16 times, and he was just so effective 243 yards, 2 touchdowns. I think Alvin Kamara is on pace to have his best season that we've seen, where many people had seen him as kind of fallen off in recent years. But he was tremendous 20 carries for 115 yards, 3 touchdowns on the ground, and another one through the air. So I think he's taking a lot of pressure off of Derek Carr, and the other weapons on the offense are doing their jobs as well. So now we'll take a look at the standings and just some interesting things. What do you take of the Ravens and Bengals both starting the season off 0-2?
My take on that is if you bet me $10, they'd be the last two people, the bottom two in the standings after 2 weeks at the beginning of the season.
All good. You're back now.
All right. I mean, the Ravens losing to the Chiefs in Kansas City, okay, but losing to the Raiders at home, I wouldn't have seen that coming. The Bengals, Joe Burrow, he's not looking like Joe Burrow so far this season. I mean, the Steelers, 2 wins that I think they're wins that are attainable wins for them, but they're still looking good. I mean, beating the Broncos and the Falcons are both away back-to-back weeks. Steelers can't be overlooked. Steelers might be dangerous. They definitely have a tougher schedule as the season goes on. It'll be interesting to see where that pans out. But yeah, I think the AFC North will be a really, really interesting division to follow this season.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think the Steelers starting off 2-0. Obviously, I don't think anyone's would say the Steelers are the best team in the division. Um, And the Browns have also been very underwhelming. Obviously, Deshaun Watson not living up to that $50 million a year that he's making
Right.
guaranteed. But yeah, it has been interesting. I think the Ravens I thought were pulling away Sunday, but just couldn't close it out. And I think that's been an issue over the past couple years. And I think obviously it's now kind of crunch time to bounce back. You don't see many teams starting 0-3 or 0-4 that are then going on to make the playoffs. And I believe the Ravens got the Cowboys. I can verify that right now.
Yes,
Yeah,
Ravens
they're
in
going to
Dallas.
Jerry's World. So obviously that's
Yes.
a big game for both teams. And the Ravens starting 0-3 would be detrimental to their season this early. Bengals, on the other hand, after that week one game, I had a lot of question marks, but I think week two is definitely improvement. I think Burrow looked much better. Sure, he had that fumble that cost
Right.
his team the game, but I mean, also he was tremendous on offense and constantly finding open guys and keeping pace with Patrick Mahomes, who is probably the best in the league.
Sure.
Um, Very controversial ending to that game. Just real quick, what did you think of that late PI call?
I think, as everyone always says, borderline towards the Chiefs. I can see both ways. I can see it was PI. I can see it wasn't, but I can see why Bengals fans are upset about it. I can see why I don't have an opinion on that. I don't know.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's hard to pick one side because if you don't throw a flag, Chiefs fans are unhappy. If you throw a flag, Bengals fans are unhappy.
It was an
Um,
extreme judgment call. I think.
yeah. I would say if I'm the official in that scenario, I like to let the teams play it out there.
Mhm.
Especially on a call that close. I don't think it was really necessary to make that big of a call that really won the Chiefs the game. I mean, I think
Right.
everyone knew as soon as they got to the inside Bengals territory, Harrison Butker, one of the clutchest kickers in the league, he wasn't going to miss that. Um, Moving on, let's go to AFC West now. You got the Chiefs, you got the Chargers, both sitting at 2-0. What do you make of that? Could the Chargers possibly be in the running for the AFC West through 2 weeks?
The Chargers have looked good. 2 wins against teams that they should have beat, but I just don't see the Chargers competing with the Chiefs in the division. I mean, the Chargers again beating the Raiders, beating the Panthers, two teams the Chargers should beat as they are. I think Harbaugh looks extremely comfortable as an NFL coach so far. I think he's adjusting well, but I know they've got some tests coming up. They play the Steelers this week, then they play the Chiefs. It'll be interesting. Steelers are looking pretty good. Chiefs, obviously, back-to-back Super Bowl champions. So in 2 weeks to see what the Chargers' record is, it'll be very interesting.
Yeah, now I definitely think the Chiefs are going to win the AFC West. I don't think while the Chargers are a good football team, I don't think they're gonna. I think they're gonna lose to top tier teams. They're not going to be able to hang with the upper echelon teams in the NFL, at least for the regular season. Maybe we'll see something in the playoffs.
Right.
They do have Justin Herbert, who is a game changer, and I think Harbaugh's done a great job coaching so far. But I don't see a world where the Chiefs don't come out
Right.
atop the AFC West. And AFC South, pretty easy story. Texans are the only team with wins.
Right.
So finally, AFC East. Um, Obviously, Tua Tagovailoa goes down with that concussion Thursday night. Tons of question marks on his career this season for the Dolphins. Dolphins did just sign Tyler Huntley, I believe.
Yes, they did. They signed him off the Ravens practice squad.
So I think
Skylar Thompson. Skylar Thompson did not. He did not look good in the remainder of the game after Tua got hurt. So I think, assuming Tua's going to be out for some time, I think maybe Snoop. Maybe I just think the Dolphins they need a different person at quarterback to solve that problem.
yeah, I wasn't expecting Huntley to be the answer. I was thinking maybe Tannehill was going to be the guy or Jimmy Garoppolo. But I don't hate the move to go to Huntley. Um,
Pro Bowl quarterback.
yeah, Pro Bowl quarterback. We'll see. I mean, the Jets coming off that win against the Titans. Obviously, some things need to be fixed. but a win's a win, and I still think the Bills are obviously the team to beat in the AFC East. That offense was really clicking on Thursday night. Josh Allen's great. James Cook is great. Quiet game from Keon Coleman, but they're finding ways to win, and through 2 games only. But yeah, I think they're still the team to beat in the AFC East.
I think the Bears are doing it. The Bills. They're doing a great job of showing their versatility. I mean, Week 1, Josh Allen had I think 3 touchdowns through the air. Looked really great in the passing game. This week, like you said, James Cook, he dominated on the ground, also catching some passes. But I mean, the Bills. I was low on the Bills coming into the season, but they've shown that they can compete and they can beat you multiple different ways.
Yeah, definitely. I think a lot of people after Diggs left, they lost a ton of guys in free agency, thinking this was going to be a down year for the Bills. Moving over to the NFC, where to start? How about the NFC West? Really interesting division. Cardinals dominant win over the Rams. Rams 0-2. Obviously, that very close Week 1 loss to the Lions. 49ers lost to the Vikings, as we stated earlier. Seahawks are 2-0, but I think you would probably make the case they beat 2 of the worst teams in the NFL. What
Sure.
do you make of this division right now, and who do you have? Maybe has anything changed since your preseason predictions?
I mean, I think I'm not going to say it's changed. I think it can be a lot more up in the air than we initially thought it would be. I mean, 49ers, yes, they didn't have CMC this week, but they have such a variety of weapons and their team is just too much of a complete team to be losing on the road to the Vikings. They didn't look good. They just that's all it can be. I think the Seahawks, yes, 2 relatively easy wins, but Seahawks are 2-0. Seahawks could be all right. Rams, I mean the Rams still they're 0-2. They looked quite awful against the Cardinals this week. But I mean Rams can turn it around. They have some playmakers. And even the Cardinals, I wouldn't have picked the Cardinals to go anywhere this season, but who knows, they can surprise some people. They look really good against the Rams this week, and if they can keep that up, they can compete, I think.
Yeah, I
That'll
think
be another interesting, very interesting division to follow. I think um, the AFC North and that division right there. I think those might be the 2 in football that, to me, are the most up in the air.
Yeah, I definitely think that the Cardinals connection, Murray to Harrison, really showed how special that's going to be for years to come. And Murray, I think a lot of people forgot how good he was when he's healthy. He was tremendous in that game. Um, yeah, it'll be interesting. Obviously, we don't know how long CMC is going to be out for. That offense could definitely use him. Rams without I had them as a sleeper team entering the season, but without Puka and without Cup for what could be a substantial amount of time,
Right.
they might be in some trouble. Um, let's move to the NFC South. Obviously, we had the Falcons playing right now. They were a lot of people's preseason pick. I guess you would say the Bucks and the Falcons. But as we talked about earlier, Saints have looked fantastic through 2 games.
Very good.
What do you think of this division race?
I think this division slept on by fans and the Panthers. Obviously, I don't think they're very good at all. But the Buccaneers, they're showing that they're legit. A lot of people wrote them off after last year, but being the Bucks being able to retain almost everybody from the roster last year, going out, not making the most flashy moves in the offseason, but just re-signing their core. The Bucks are a strong team, and with Baker Mayfield, he's tough and he's looking really damn good so far. I mean the Falcons a lot. I'd say most people pick them to win the division, but lost in Week 1. They're right now they're up 3-0 on the Eagles, so we'll see where that goes. But Falcons can definitely still compete. I don't think we've seen enough to tell from them. And oh my gosh, the Saints so far. They
Yeah,
they might
insane.
have they looked like the best team in the league so far.
Definitely on offense. Yeah, definitely top 3 overall. I mean, they've been fantastic.
They've been good. They've got 4 tough games in a row coming up. So to see where they come out on the back end of that. If they can win 2 of them, if they've got Eagles, Falcons, Chiefs, and Bucks. If they can get 2 of those wins, I'd say Saints can be dangerous, especially going into the playoffs if they've shown that they can beat some top teams. Um,
Definitely.
I've got a question.
Um,
I've got a question for you here. looking at the Chicago Bears and number one pick Caleb Williams. How do you think the Bears actually are as a team? Do you think Williams is just some growing pains? Do you think he's just adjusting to being in the NFL, being on a new team, new scheme? Or, I mean, what do you think the tail of the tape is with the Bears?
Yeah, I definitely think it's some growing pains that are going on. I'm not gonna say Caleb Williams is a bust. I think
Right.
he's a rookie. He's got to learn the offense. Obviously, the lack of weapons isn't an issue. Maybe I mean he doesn't have a strong run game to rely on, which I think is forcing him into a lot of uncomfortable passing scenarios. But he needs to be better. Which I do think he will be better. While I do think he's overhyped, I think that he's still the best quarterback that was in that draft class, and he'll prove that by the end of this year. I think the Bears for the future are going to be electric, especially on offense. And I think the NFC North is going to be in a top. You give it 2 years, it's going to be the best division in football. You're talking about the Vikings, who have looked tremendous this year. A lot of people wrote them off. Now, I mean, they might have a quarterback controversy. Who do you want starting next year, Sam Darnold or J.J. McCarthy? Obviously, you had the Lions, who are one of the youngest and best teams in football. You had the Packers. Jordan Love will be back soon enough. That team was great last year. And then you'll have the Bears. I think that division is going to be great for years to come. I think that sense of competition is really going to help with Caleb Williams' development. Um, the NFC North overall, though, is just an interesting division this year. I mean, Vikings out ahead over 2 games. Lions, obviously, with that crushing loss at home to the Bucks. Lions have another big. Lions have the Cardinals. They're going to Arizona. Vikings got home against the Texans. So those are both big statement games, I would say, for the NFC North division. Do you have anything to add on that?
I mean, I agree. I think Jordan Love, he's shown that he is one of the top quarterbacks. I mean, he got paid a bag. When he comes back, he can make the Packers a much better team. Caleb Williams and his weapons around him, if he finds his footing, Bears can be good. I mean, I think there's a very good potential for all four teams in this division to be at or above 500 for this year and going into the future. I completely agree with what you said. For this year, I mean, I still think the Lions might take. I think they would take the division. Their defense looks extremely complete. I mean, Aiden Hutchinson yesterday, what a day for him. Terry and Arnold, I think he had a minor injury this week, so we'll see what happens with that. But he's looked good defensively. They don't have many holes. Offensively, I mean, Amon-Ra St. Brown can take over a game by himself. Jahmyr Gibbs, great running back. I still have the Lions winning this division. I know it's a boring pick, but this year, I think they've got it.
Yeah, I like the Lions. Also, I think obviously that could change this Sunday if the Vikings beat the Texans. I think they're in conversations for one of the best teams in the league. Definitely in the conversation for the NFC North. Finally, to wrap things up, NFC East. Obviously, we have the Eagles playing right now. They're down 3-0 to the Falcons as we record this in the second quarter. But obviously, underwhelming for the Cowboys losing to home against the Saints, as we've mentioned. Commanders, Giants don't seem like they're going to be a threat to the division at all. Who do you see between the Cowboys and Eagles this year? I feel like they've been flip flopping in years past of who's winning the division and who's the wild card team.
Right.
Who do you have coming out on top?
I think it'll be a close one. I think both the Cowboys and the Eagles, I think they're both good. I think they're not great. But the Cowboys, I mean, this week, not just a loss, but a crushing loss to the Saints. We'll see if Mike McCarthy will be able to make some adjustments coming into the weeks ahead. I think the Eagles, coming into a rough stretch from the end of last season and even not looking great week one against the Packers and losing so far, and it's too early to tell who that will be. But the Eagles, again, they look good. They don't look great. Um, I'm gonna go ahead and take. Ooh, I think it'll come down honestly to the Eagles and Cowboys matchups this season. I think they're
Mhm.
neck and neck. They play week 16 in Philly. I would be not surprised at all if that game decides the division. neither of the teams are that amazing to me. I don't.
Yeah, I think with how good the NFC could be this year, they might just be middle of the pack teams. They might not be the NFC powerhouses that we've seen over the past 2-3 years.
For sure.
Um, I'll ask you this. Obviously, some very exciting rookie performances. Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. You could throw in Jaden Daniels, a couple other guys. Who, to you, who's been the most exciting rookie that you've seen this season?
I'd say most exciting performance was Marvin Harrison yesterday. I mean, I know week one didn't make too many flashes, but I mean he looked amazing. Really, really good. I think he's like you said, him and Kyler will be a great duo. Jaden Daniels, he's looked really good on his legs. He's been able when pressure's around him. I saw it when they were playing my Buccaneers, but he can escape the pocket and he has the legs. His legs are up there with any other quarterback that you could name. If he gets more experience, more poise throwing the ball, I really think he could become a star. I no one so far. I mean, stands out to me as the rookie so far. A lot of them have looked good one day, not 1 week. I mean, not incredible for both weeks. But I'm gonna go with Marvin Harrison. I mean, like he looked like Ohio State Marvin Harrison yesterday.
Yes.
100, 130 yards in your second game in the NFL is pretty serious, and he's shown that he's a top notch wide receiver. That's why he went. So what do you go in the draft? Number three,
Number 4, I believe,
four,
was
number four.
Cardinals. Yeah.
He's shown he's worth that pick. Um, I think he's great.
Yeah, I think definitely he has so much potential with his size, his athleticism, and just his talent. Like I think the combination of that, there he's the pro if you could build a robot prototype wide receiver, it's Marvin Harrison Jr. But I'll throw some flowers to the other big wide receiver in this year's draft class, Malik Neighbors. He obviously I had that huge fourth down drop for the Giants. That kind of put a bad rap on his day. But he also finished with I had the exact stat line here. 10 receptions, 127 yards, and a touchdown. And it seemed like in other scenarios, on third downs, on fourth downs, Neighbors was open and he was making big plays. He's so shifty and hard to bring down once he gets the ball. Um, and I think that really helped Jones in game 2. I think Jones was really slept on in week 2. People didn't notice. I mean, only 16 for 28, 180 yards, but he threw for 2 touchdowns. I think that was definitely a step in the right direction, especially with how much the Giants were leaning on the run game. Um, that was still a loss that I'm still scratching my head about. I mean, I'm a Giants fan, it's a little bit of bias. But the Giants just seemed like such a better team when I was watching that game. Devin Singletary, phenomenal. Daniel Jones, good in the air and on the ground. Malik Neighbors, tremendous. Wan'Dale Robinson, really good. It's a shame when you don't have a kicker. But it's also a shame that you couldn't convert on 2-point conversions or the extra point that your punter took. Um, so it's hard to really blame one person. It was a lot of tiny mistakes. Obviously, Neighbors with the big drop. But I mean, it's hard to blame the guy that was also carrying your offense with 2/3 of Daniel Jones' yards going at him and 2/3 of his completions going to Neighbors. Um, Finally, for NFL, breaking news that hit today was Bryce Young benched by the Carolina Panthers. Panthers off to a terrible 0-2 start. What do you think of that with the Panthers going to Andy Dalton? Is this Bryce Young situation still salvageable?
I think the decision to bench Bryce Young is the complete correct decision. I think so far and last year as well, he's looked just not starting caliber. Some of the decisions that he's made to throw, it's mind-boggling to me that some of the stuff that I've seen. I think Dave Canales and making the decision to go over to Andy Dalton. I mean, why not? Try it. If Andy Dalton starts this week, looks terrible, you can go back to Bryce Young. They don't have much to lose. I think they're the worst team in the NFL this season. but I think it's the smart decision. I think it's the right decision. Um, doing it after 2 weeks, it shows that they're not afraid. He was the number one overall pick 1 year ago, and a lot of times teams still want to ride that out, but it shows that they're not afraid to do what they think gives their team the best shot of winning a football game.
Yeah, definitely. I think Bryce Young just isn't ready, and I don't think I think that he's not as talented as people thought he was coming out of college. But I also think the Panthers are just a terribly run organization, um, and they're not a good team. I mean, I don't know what you want Bryce Young to do with no offensive line and no targets. I mean, I get the switch to Dalton. You might as well have Andy Dalton taking a beating back there than your second year, supposedly future superstar quarterback is what the Panthers are hoping he'll be. But I'll be honest, I don't think this situation is salvageable at this point. I think the Panthers are just so poorly run that Bryce Young's not going to work out with them. I think maybe Bryce Young will work out on a different team. I think if he was with the Vikings and Kevin O'Connell,
Yeah,
I think he'd be a great quarterback. I think if he was even with an average coach, an average team, he'd be a good quarterback. But I just don't see it working in Carolina anymore.
I, I think
Um,
I think a big part of that of Carolina why they've been so terrible is the office. I mean, I saw a stat today that it was crazy to me. In the Panthers trades, giving up DJ Moore, Brian Burns, and McCaffrey the last 2 years, they have given up more first round picks in those three trades than they've received. I mean,
mhm.
DJ Moore, Burns, McCaffrey, those are three of the top players in the league in their positions, and those trades, I mean, they've they've just lose in their trades. They're drafting no standouts really to me. I just think the Panthers they gotta look themselves in the mirror. I think they're gonna have to make some tough decisions. I mean, firing their coach last year was the right decision. Dave Canales, I think he's a good coach, but hiring a new coach isn't enough to save your team from I know I've already said it a few times, but the worst team in the NFL, and I don't think it's even much of a debate.
Yeah, very, very interesting. I totally agree with you there. Anything else you want to add about the NFL before we move on?
All I want to add is the Eagles just scored a touchdown.
Oh,
Jalen
who
Hurts
was
to
it?
Devonta Smith, seven to
Oh,
three.
really? Okay. Yeah, a lot of people were looking at that AJ Terrell, Devontae Smith matchup, so I'll have to go watch. Definitely have to go watch those highlights right after
Yeah,
this. I got one question for you for college football now. Week 3 was very uneventful. No upsets really. I mean, Kentucky gave Georgia a run for their money.
mm-hmm.
South Carolina gave LSU a run for their money. That one came down to the final play. Um, but let's talk Texas. Texas football is back. They're the number one
Oh
team
yeah,
in the country. And Quinn Ewers goes down with an injury. Now, this injury is only going to sideline him for most likely 1 week. But you had Arch Manning come in, light up the stat sheet. Obviously, not against the best opponent. But do you see there being any quarterback controversy in Texas when Ewers is healthy?
I think Arch Manning, he did look great. He looked like he had. I mean, he was poised. I know they were playing UTSA, not the best of teams, but he looked great. I think seeing him if he gets to start against a formidable opponent, it would be interesting. I still think Quinn Ewers is a very, very good quarterback. I think he's right up there, the top quarterback in college football this season. I don't see Arch Manning this year really being, if they're both healthy, being uh, the starter over Ewers. But in the future, next year, I mean, Arch Manning, what we've seen from him so far, he's looked like a college quarterback.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I do think Ewers is this year's answer for Texas. I wouldn't go to Manning this year, just because Ewers. I mean, he's the Heisman front runner. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
any level of play and the experience Ewers has is obviously going to make him better in the big games. So I'm sticking with Ewers if I'm Texas. But I think Texas is in a great position for years to come. Arch Manning looked tremendous. He has some wheels to him too. I mean, you don't see that in the Manning family.
I
Um,
know. That was good to see.
But I do actually, I do have one more question. I asked the same thing to Carter Masterson, who was on the podcast last week. Uh, Jumping to the ACC, Syracuse beating Georgia Tech 31-28 thriller. 2-0, coming off the bye week now. They'll play Stanford on Friday. Very easy schedule for the Orange Men. Do you think they got a shot at making the playoffs this year?
I think if they can get some key wins going into ACC play, I think they 100% could make the playoffs this year. I think so far it'll be interesting to see depending on what they do this week. But I think you can make a case for them to be in the top 25 so far. They don't have the greatest of schedules, but if they can get a win, UNLV is a big one. I know it's non-conference, but at Boston College, looking later on their schedule, NC State. I think if Syracuse can win some of these big games, 100%, I think they can make the playoffs. And I think they're not the popular pick, but I think they're a darn good pick to win the ACC this season.
Yeah, I think obviously Miami has looked great, but Syracuse could easily be in that ACC championship game. And one game you never know. And for all we know, the Syracuse Miami game in the last week of the regular season could be a preview for what the ACC championship is if both those teams get to that last regular season game undefeated. So I think that would be very interesting. I think the easy schedule for the Orangemen really favors them in this 12-team playoff because it does give them the ability to lose that Miami game and still be in. If I'm on the committee and a one-loss Syracuse team, even with a weak ACC schedule, is in any one-loss team that is a Power 4 school is in my opinion. But that's really all I had for college football. Anything else you wanted to note on week 3?
I just want to ask you about a couple teams that they've looked good. I think their ranking so far might be a little misleading about really if they are. Start with Missouri. They're 3-0. They've looked good. They've got the weapons. Do you think they're really the 7th best team in the country though?
I expected you to ask me something about Missouri. I thought Boston College punched them in the mouth on Saturday,
Mm-hmm.
and I thought Boston College was going to go get a big win in Mizzou, but Missouri jumped right back at them. I think that was a huge win, and I think they're very deserving of that 7th spot. Looking at the standings, maybe you put Miami ahead of them. I don't think you bump Oregon ahead of them. Oregon's looked rough. I don't trust. I still don't trust Penn State. It's hard to trust them. USC maybe. I really liked Kansas State. Maybe them. But no, I do think Missouri is a top team. I think they're very deserving of their spot that they have, and they do have the weapons to compete in some big games. I would love to see. Let me
For sure.
pull up their schedule real quick. They got Alabama, obviously, big game. Oklahoma. Those are their 2 ranked opponents. They'll have South Carolina, which is still a very good team at 2-1. But I do think, Texas A&M. I didn't even see that. A lot of big games, so I think they're gonna definitely have to prove themselves there. But I do think they are a really good team, and we'll show everybody that Missouri football is here to stay for the next couple of years.
Right.
This season.
Also, there's a handful of interesting teams in the bunch this season. Notre Dame, Oklahoma, USC, they're all very intriguing. But I want to ask you about LSU. Tough loss in the thriller in a neutral site against USC. They went into South Carolina, close game, but I think South Carolina is a decent team. Won that game this week. They've got a really tough schedule coming the rest of the season. They have 4 ranked opponents still to go. Do you think that LSU could win or contend for the SEC, or what's your prediction for where you think LSU is going to go the rest of the season?
That's a rough question. I looked at the standings, and I saw LSU and Notre Dame right there, the top 2 ranked one-loss teams. And I do think LSU is a good football team. They've started to come together, and I think that USC loss was obviously crushing. But I do not think they're going to be able to stack up against Ole Miss, Alabama, I think they're even going to have trouble against Oklahoma. I think they really do continue to disappoint in the big game. I mean, obviously they came through against South Carolina, but still almost there. They were about a yard away from having that game go to overtime, and that could have been another potential loss. As Brian Kelly said, this team struggles with closing out games, and I don't see that changing as they get to better competition. Um, Maybe it will. Maybe they'll prove me wrong, but I think LSU, they really needed that win against USC because I definitely see them dropping two of their games, at least half of their games between with Ole Miss, Alabama, Texas A&M, and Oklahoma, and I don't think a three-loss team is making the playoff. Um, I think maybe they beat Ole Miss, maybe they beat Texas A&M, maybe they beat Oklahoma. They're not beating Bama. So maybe a two-loss LSU team that has that resume is definitely getting in. But yeah, I think they needed that first win against USC to really boost their chances. I'll just harp quickly on the other one-loss team I mentioned, Notre Dame. Um, NIU loss was terrible. Watching that game was a disaster for the Irish, but they really bounced back this week against Purdue team that some people thought could give the Irish more trouble. Um, Notre Dame is tremendous at running the football. Still so many questions with the passing game. I don't think Riley Leonard is a good quarterback.
Really?
Um,
I
at this point, I mean, I would move him to tight end. He can't throw the football. All he can do is run. And I think that what's their backup's name? Steve Angeli, looked great in their bowl game against Oklahoma State last year, and looked good passing in this game. 6 for 9, 100 yards, 2 touchdowns. Um, I don't know what it's going to take for them to make a switch, because I do think the Notre Dame has a very easy schedule where I feel like you might find out too late that it's time to make a switch, and now you're a two-loss team. And when it comes to Notre Dame with this easy of a schedule, a two-loss Irish team probably isn't going to make the playoffs.
right.
So I feel like that's sort of the issue with Notre Dame. I don't think they're going to be able to compete with the very best teams with Riley Leonard at quarterback. At least full time. I think Riley Leonard is a tremendous runner. He's not afraid to lower the shoulder, get you extra yards, but he's just not going to be good enough when he is put in third and long scenarios and has to pass. So that's why I would like Angela if I were Marcus Freeman right now.
Right. And on that note of quarterbacks and backup quarterbacks, today I don't know if you saw Michigan announced Alex Orji as their starting quarterback going forward, taking over from Davis Warren, who I mean he's looked rough so far. What's your take on that? Do you think that's a good decision, and where do you think that'll take the Michigan team coming into Big Ten play soon?
Um, I'll say Warren, terrible game versus Arkansas State, 11 for 14, 122 yards, but it's 3 incompletions were all interceptions.
Right.
And against an Arkansas State team that's terrible. So I think they needed to make a switch, but I also don't think Alex Orji is a really good. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I don't think Michigan's going to be a playoff team this year. They're just not good enough. They lost too much. They don't have Harbaugh at the helm. They'll make a bowl game. They'll win 8-9 games, but their schedule's too tough.
Mhm.
Future
Yeah,
maybe
I don't see them beating USC. I don't see them beating USC this week.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a down year by Michigan standards for Michigan. Not to say that they'll still be. Let me check out this Michigan schedule. I know they have obviously USC, Washington. They should win. Illinois, Oregon, Michigan State. Ohio State. I think they're going to lose a majority of those games. So it's going to be a longer year for Michigan fans. They'll still be decent. It'll be a good starting point for this new core of players. But yeah, it's just I've kind of put Michigan out the window this year. I don't see them as being a real threat for the college football playoff.
Agreed.
All right, well, that'll do it for college football section. Finally, let's talk some MLB real quick. Season coming to a close in a matter of just about 2 weeks. Looking at the standings, obviously you still have Well, now the Yankees 3 games ahead. That series against the Red Sox was huge. It's not only from a win standpoint, but Aaron Judge coming back alive. Looks like he's now Aaron Judge again in time for the playoffs. Guardians 4-game lead over the Royals. I think that will stay. Houston 4.5 over the Mariners. That's interesting, and then I think
Mariners are hot. Mariners are
the
hot right
Mariners are
now.
hot. They're figuring it out offensively, and I wouldn't be surprised if they're equidistant from a wild card spot and from the Astros, and I think they could easily win this division with how hot they are right now. Even though they are 4.5 games back. Jumping to the NL, obviously the Brewers have the Central locked up. Dodgers 3.5 on the Padres. I think that's enough with the Dodgers being a more talented team. And then East is locked up by the Phillies, but obviously you have the Mets and the Braves competing for that third wild card spot. Is there any race that looks really interesting to you as we come to a close this season?
I mean, I really think for the NL wild card, really, the Padres are only 3.5 games up of the Mets and Braves. Of the Padres, Diamondbacks, Braves, and Mets, I think they're all good teams. I think especially the Braves and the Padres, if they get deep into October with their staffs right now, I think they can make a run at the Brewers, at the Dodgers, maybe at the Phillies. Phillies look pretty good though. So of that four right there, which of them do you think misses out on the playoffs?
Um, I think the Padres are a lock. I'm gonna go with the Braves. I think the Mets are gonna find a way to do it, which is the opposite of what the Mets usually do. Usually, the Mets are gonna find a way to mess things up.
Yeah,
But I think the Mets have a little bit of a chip on their shoulder. A lot of people wrote them off at the beginning of this year. Mets are in at the top of the 10th right now against the Nationals 1-1. That'll be a big close. But it's tough. I mean, the Mets play the Braves in the second to last series of the year. Obviously, that's going to be really huge.
for
Oh,
sure.
geez, I might have to change my answer at you now that I'm looking at these schedules. Let me see who the Braves have. Oh, and they both have hard schedules. Braves got to play the Royals, and the Mets. The Mets got to play the Braves, Phillies, and Brewers. But I mean, the Brewers might be resting their starters because of how that division turned out. So
Right.
I'm not sure. I do think the Diamondbacks and Padres are safe. Um,
Okay.
but I think it'll come down to that series where I think the Mets are going to get it done. Yeah.
Uh,
I,
who-
jumping back to the AL. Detroit Tigers, another hot team. We mentioned the Mariners as heating up offensively and with how good of a pitching rotation they have, but could the Tigers, only 2.5 games back of the Twins, potentially make some noise in the wild card?
I think they could. I could see them. They're pitching right now with Montero and obviously why is his name blanking me? Oh, Skubal. Obviously Tariq Skubal. I mean the Tigers that 1-2 punch, and I mean I think I can see them making the playoffs. I can see them. Let's see who they play. I could very well see them taking over the Twins in these last 2 weeks of the season. They're playing the Royals in a series right now, playoff series. Then they play the Orioles, great team. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Tigers make it. I don't see them going far in the playoffs though. I think with the lineup that the Tigers have, I mean, they're starting uh, Dylan Dingler. I mean, Andy Ibanez, players like that every day. Um, I don't think with the roster they have, if they were to make the playoffs, I don't think they'd be able to compete with the Guardians, the Orioles. But you never know. I mean, last year Rangers and Diamondbacks, they both kind of got into the playoffs and came out of nowhere. Shocked some people, made the World Series, right? So
Yeah.
I think it'll be interesting. We could very, very well see some surprising teams. What's your pick for this year? Who do you think is going to be our World Series matchup? You got any surprises? I know the Phillies. I mean, they're looking incredibly hard to beat in the NL, but
Um, I'm a Yankees fan, but I'll say I've always been negative on them. I've never thought that this is the Yankees' year where they're going to come out of the AL. Um, but I do truly think that this is the year for Yankees fans. Um, like I said, Aaron Judge looks like he's back. Juan Soto's been tremendous. Austin Wells has been great. Gleyber Torres out of the leadoff spot, great. Um, I think that the Yankees this is their year to make it out of the AL. I think they're a better team than Baltimore. They're a better team than the Guardians, and they're a better team than the Astros, who have shut them down in years past. I think the bigger question for me is who's coming out of the NL.
Okay.
Dodgers obviously have the best roster here, but you got a team like the Brewers who have just continuously found ways to win. You obviously have the Phillies who have the best record in baseball and have a roster right up there with the Dodgers. And then you have a team like the Padres, star power there. You have the Diamondbacks, the reigning World Series champs. The Mets or the Braves. Obviously, both teams are kind of could definitely them between the Mets and Braves could definitely make some postseason noise, even though they're competing for that last wild card spot. I really do think the 1 through 6 are all teams that have a possibility of making the World Series. For me, I'm gonna go with the Phillies to come out. I think after a disappointing postseason last year, the team's got something to prove. So
hmm
I'll take Yankees Phillies. What about you?
I agree. I know they've had some gut punch eliminations the last couple years. The Phillies, in October, with their current roster, I think they'd be tough. I think the Dodgers, if they were healthy, by a landslide, but Dodgers can't seem to stay healthy. I'll take the Phillies in the NL there. The AL is really, really interesting to me because in my opinion, I see the Yankees, Guardians, and Orioles as my three that I think they're neck and neck. But I also think the Royals could surprise some people. They've got some players this year, obviously not the biggest names, but uh, they've been playing really well overall. I mean, Michael Walker, Brady Singer, Cole Reagan's all pitching well for them. I can see the Royals surprising people, but um, I really think it's going to come down to the Yankees, Guardians, and Orioles for the AL. It's tough to me. I think in the playoffs, especially with the series, it comes down to pitching, and bullpens is a big part of it. I know the Yankees bullpen. It's been spotty. I know you know more than me as a Yankees fan. Um, I think I think the Orioles. I think they've got obviously a very young team, very promising team. They've been getting better and better every year. Their rebuild is it's been truly amazing to watch. I don't think it's their year quite yet. I think they're a piece or two away. Some of the trades they made at the trade deadline, I think they could have done more to really put them over a tough AL. So I'm gonna go ahead and take the Guardians as my pick for the AL World Series team. I mean, like the Royals, they've had some great, great surprises this year. I know David Fry for a bit looked like one of the best catchers slash DHs in baseball. Um, Josh Naylor's been good. Andres Jimenez has been alright. Jose Ramirez, he's Jose Ramirez. Um, I think it could be the Guards year. If the Yankees or Orioles did it, though, wouldn't surprise me one bit.
Yeah. I got one last question for you to close up today. I would say that the MVP race in both leagues has been brought down to two players. AL, you got Witt and Judge. NL, you got Otani and Lindor. Um, who are you taking? Who do you think has been the most valuable to their team?
I really think. I'll start with the NL first. Lindor, he's been great. He's been if Shohei Otani doesn't exist, the best player in the NL, especially as of late. But I think Shohei, even as a DH, I mean he's having one of the most ridiculous seasons. 50-50 as a DH is it's off the charts. Like I can't even comprehend the player that we're being able to watch. I think I think Ohtani's the MVP in the NL. I don't think it should be a close vote. I know some people are pushing Lindor, but I see Shohei. I think the AL is closer, but again, I think Judge is just having too good of a season, too historic of a season to not be the MVP. I can see the argument that Witt's more valuable to his team, as I think without Witt, the Royals are not the same team versus without Judge. I mean, the Yankees still have some other weapons, but I just think for the voters, I think Aaron Judge will take that one. He's too good. I mean, the amount of home runs he has, he gets on base at a crazy amount, doesn't strike out much. Like he's Aaron Judge, he's the MVP.
Yeah, I definitely agree with what you're saying about the AL. I think Witt has been tremendous and is probably more meaningful to the Royals than Judge is to the Yankees. But what Judge has done offensively is absurd, and I think it's the greatest offensive season since Bonds, and I think that's something that the voters won't be able to see past. And I think Judge will win the MVP, rightfully so. I think in almost any other year, Witt is your MVP for the American League. But it's just bad luck, and Aaron Judge is doing some unprecedented stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Um, just going to the NL, I see where you're coming from with Ohtani, and I do think he will win MVP. But I'll make the case for Lindor. 270 batting average, 30 home runs, which I think a lot of people are forgetting. Um, and I think he has been so important to this Mets team. People forget he's also probably the best fielding shortstop in baseball, one of top
For sure.
three for sure. Um, so I think what he provides the Mets on both sides makes him more valuable. I think obviously if Ohtani was pitching, this wouldn't be a question. But the fact that Ohtani's just been a DH who hits a lot of home runs and steals a lot of bags, to me, I think what Lindor is doing is more impressive of being the best offensive shortstop and one of the best defensive shortstops. So for me, I would say Lindor's my NL MVP, but I do think it will end up being Ohtani.
Right.
That's all my talking points. Anything else you want to add before we close things up?
Uh, I just have an interesting question. I'm curious what you have to what you think about this. I saw. I mean, Dave Roberts. Otani's been working on the mound a little bit. They're not ruling him out of pitching in the playoffs. Do you think that will happen? And if it does happen, do you think how do you think it will be?
I don't know. I don't know. I think it's really interesting. It could be a huge curveball, no pun intended, to a lot of teams. If you're gonna see Otani on the mound, the Dodgers really need it with how many injuries they've been racking up. But I also don't know if it's worth it for the Dodgers. I do think you can win without Otani pitching,
Right.
and I think any chance of him getting hurt for
Right.
future seasons could maybe shut him down long term. And now Otani's under contract for so long that now you're hurting your whole future. I mean, you spent so much money on this guy that I think it's maybe not the right idea to pitch him, especially when you don't know how it's going to turn out. I mean, he's a great pitcher. Shohei Ohtani's a great pitcher, but postseason play where tensions are high affect guys as it is, and I think a guy having to now make his season debut in the postseason is going to be more rattled than ever. That was a great question. What do you think on that?
I agree with you. I think they might be trying to rush him back because of injuries they've had to. I know Yamamoto just got back, but Kershaw, Stone, Glasnow, they've had count. I mean, the Dodgers' injuries this year, they to their starting pitching has been massive. But I think I wouldn't be surprised if he does pitch. I don't think he's starting. I don't think he's going 6, 7 innings. I think maybe he's relieving. Maybe he's opening. I think they're smart enough to. We just signed this guy to the biggest contract in baseball history. We're not going to risk him getting further hurt. Um, but yeah, I think if he does pitch, he'll be great. He's an amazing pitcher. He hasn't pitched all season. I don't think that matters. I still think he's one of the best pitchers in the league, and that's my take.
Yeah, well, definitely. Braden, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thanks for
And
having me. It was a blast.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for you guys for watching at home. We'll see you next time. This is the Shot Clock Sports Report podcast, signing off.